Hi, and welcome everyone. I'm so excited that you could join us today on LinkedIn Live. I'm your host, Anis Merchant, representing Course 5 Intelligence Limited. And today I'm here to host, along with my colleagues, an event which is continuation to our last webinar, which we did last month in May with Forrester. The analyst was Michelle Goetz, and the focus was how can we scale LLMs in the enterprise setup. Now, when you think about Course 5 is dedicated to driving digital transformation by leveraging AI, analytics, and insights. And we've been a hub of innovative thinking and solutions that meet the needs of modern business. Today, me and my colleagues are coming to you live under our acclaimed initiative, which we started in 2020, which was called Course 5 Compass. And through this platform, we've been exploring a range of topics, which is designed to help you navigate complex landscape of exponential technologies. Through this platform, we are trying to provide a compass which you need to guide your strategies and decisions in this. But today's live stream is very special for all of us. And the reason why it is special is because we embark on a critical exercise at Course 5 by introducing our Gen AI series. So, whether you are a seasoned AI enthusiast or a budding technologist or simply curious about the various exponential technologies, we promise you session, not only this one, but the future ones, full of insights, dynamic discussion, and actionable insights. So, whether you have a cup of coffee, tea, or if you're winding down today, please join us for the next 15 minutes as we go along this journey of exploring the various topics in Gen AI. Now, while you've heard a little bit about me, but I would love to introduce my two other panelists. First is Nitesh Jain, who's our President and Chief Operating Officer at Course 5 Intelligence. Nitesh is the Nitesh is responsible for driving the company's growth agenda, strategy, customer success, employee experience, and solutions. Prior to joining Course 5, he served as a vice president and cluster head for UK and Ireland as a global business head for travel, hospitality, and public sector verticals at Wipro Limited. He was also the founding leader for Wipro's analytics practice. Welcome, Nitesh.
Thank you.
And, and my next colleague is Jay Ramachandran. Jay is our SVP for AI Labs at Course 5. He's responsible for applied AI research, innovation, and IP development. He's a highly experienced analytics and AI thought leader, design thinker, inventor with extensive experience across a wide variety of industry verticals like retail, CPG, technology, telecom, financial services, and many more. So, welcome, Jay. Welcome to this panel.
Thank you, Anis.
Great. So, Nidesh, I'll start with you first because you had a webinar a month ago with Michelle, and there were many unanswered questions, and it was, one of the few webinars which I attended where there was so much of engagement from the audience, and there were so many questions. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. So, the intention of today's discussion is to try to answer some of the questions which the audience had. So, when you think about LLMs or when you think about Gen AI largely, what do you see as many companies focusing on, and how can they, you know, measure the success? Because today everybody is jumping on this bandwagon. Everybody is excited, and when I say everybody, not only enterprise but students and employees, and everybody is excited. But specifically for enterprises, how do you think that they should go about measuring success or defining success? What does success look like?
Sure. Thanks, Anis. And first of all, thank you for again having me on this panel. It's always very exciting to continue to, engage in conversations like this and learn from my learned colleagues like yourselves. Interesting question in terms of how enterprises should look at measuring the success. See, first and foremost, I think let's be very careful in terms of what exactly is the measure of success, specifically when it comes to large language models or generative AI. Because the definition of that KPI is very, very important. And I think it's very clearly evident that a large portion of AI engagements and or analytical initiatives fail. You read research report, it can be anywhere between 55 to 80%. And the reason for that is either lack of adoption or lack of trust in the data. Those are the two primary reasons, if you will, right? So I think when it comes to this new wave, which is of LLM and Gen AI, um, defining that KPI, I think, is the first major milestone. And I would say at this stage where we are still evolving, look at four KPIs from my perspective. First and foremost is it's a beautiful weapon to make adoption a lot more easier, right? So adoption as a KPI in terms of a lot of data trivia, a lot of insights being generated, but not much adoption. And mediums like generative AI, LLM, which makes it very easy to consume actionable intelligence. That's one. Second is a lot of bandwidth of human labor can be freed up to do a lot more meaningful tasks, right? So it's not just about the time saved, but the time deployed into much more meaningful activity, and ROI from that probably is a good second KPI. Experience enhancement, a lot of use cases where you can just simply enhance the experience of how a service is consumed, right? I think is something which should be looked at as third KPI. And the fourth one is you know the ability to serve customer from a time to speed perspective, or time to value perspective, right? There are use cases where that. So those are some of the initial set of KPIs. Right now, I think we should worry about them more as opposed to probably a hard business ROI, in-year payback, etc., etc. So that's one. But if you look at various reports, I think it is very, very clear, that across business functions, whether it is marketing, e-commerce, R&D, a lot of functions where training, learning, etc., where it can truly generate billions to trillions of dollars. That's what the prediction is, billions to trillions of dollars in terms of uh, potential value in the next few years, if you will. And in that context, I think look at from three lenses: efficiency and effectiveness of a particular operation, right? That generates a lot of business value. Cost savings, right? And then being able to deploy that into much more value-added task, if you will, and the user satisfaction and adoption, right? Those are the three things. I think that's how enterprises should right now look at it, as opposed to probably doing the typical standard business case that one would try to attempt. One would attempt if right. So that would be my perspective. Anis.
No, Nitesh, this is interesting. So, what you're trying to imply is that rather than saying, hey, let's measure dollars or let's measure straight away pounds coming out of the initiative, since you're in UK, you would be, your recommendation is get a little bit more tactical, more operational from a efficiency and effectiveness aspects and focus on measures where it can help take that next step by 10% better or 15% better than what it was missing. And that's an interesting perspective, Nitesh. But you know, what you shared is more from a management leadership and somebody who's running a business perspective. But Jay, from your perspective, since you run this AI lab, right, like how would you measure a success of an Gen AI initiative within a lab or a COE or an analytics, a central analytics team? Because both may have different point of views. So
Yeah.
first of all, do you agree with Nitesh on his point of view? And second is, if are there other measures which you should look at from an analytics or a COE or an AI lab perspective?
Yep. Absolutely. I think Nitesh definitely highlighted a lot of interesting aspects from a business perspective. Uh, when we look at it from a technology perspective, we need to see more from, for example, you have like different kind of use cases which is already running in the particular organization, right? Already, like companies are actually using different models today. I mean, be it for emotion analysis, sentiment analysis, topic modeling, a whole lot of stuff people are already doing. Within those particular use cases, we need to see like how much of we can actually apply LLM type of model, right? And then we need to see like whether the applicability of LLM is substantially going to improve some of your model performance metrics. That is actually very, very important, because you already had some investments in the existing models. They're actually in a BAU mode, and then you are actually deriving benefits out of this. But at the same time, like by bringing in LLM, like is it going to be a technologically supercharged kind of performance you are going to get, or is it like going to get only incremental benefit, right? And we just need to do some kind of a cost benefit analysis even from a technology perspective as well. That's one. Number two is like, while actually you are using some of these models, be it, it could be from any of the providers like, let's say, OpenAI or Google or anyone, we need to see like whether you want to go for a closed model like that, or you kind of look at like some of these open source models as well, which you actually need to fine tune and so on and so forth. And once actually you have decided which one actually you want to go for, subsequently you definitely need to look at like what kind of output actually it produces, right? Because end of the day, when it comes to LLM, we are actually looking at like much more creative, much more like coherent, much more relevant kind of content. So we need to have a definite set of metrics. How do we measure these things? This is like kind of evolving space, because how do you measure coherent responses, right? I mean, two responses should look same or different, but at the same time we are also looking at like creativity of the response as well. So when I actually have a kind of a ground truth, and I generate something new, then we are actually looking at like how similar or how dissimilar. And dissimilar means it can be creative as well, right? So it's kind of a complex set of metrics we need to look at, like what would work for certain set of use cases and what would not work. Plus we definitely look at from a user experience perspective as well, because today if you look at it, like some of these models, I think it's kind of overloaded today. I mean, because everyone is trying to access like OpenAI kind of APIs and other stuff. So performance is like little bit of a bottleneck in this kind of scenario. So if you're actually looking at like some real time application, maybe you want to replace your current conversational bot you have on your website, and you want to kind of use LLM, am I going to get the better experience in terms of latency, response time, and so on and so forth? Because you are looking at like a uh, very exciting experience for your customers. So you need to look at those aspects as well, and then decide like what is actually success for my company as well as like for my customers.
No, that's an interesting perspective from a engineering or from a technology perspective. But Jay, since you and I'll come back to you about the existing models a little bit later on, because it begs a discussion: does everything need to align to Gen AI, or should we kind of go on the path which we have? But I would say, let's make this a little bit more practical. Let's make this a little bit more real for the audiences. While we have started off on a point about success measures, and Nitesh, from your experience and especially experience within Course 5, there was a specific question which one of the audience, in fact, asked: have you seen any success? And I just want to preface it for everyone. LLMs are not new. LLMs have been in the industry for quite a while, right? At Coursera, we've been working for it for the last 4 5 years. Yes, the technology, the models, the attributes which the models now look at have evolved, and specifically with OpenAI capabilities, it has compelled every other player and every other model to enhance as well. So that's been a big leap of faith. But LLMs are not new. It's been there in the industry. So Nitesh, you know, do you want to share one example and then we can build on it, and then I'll ask if there are something specific to others as well?
Sure. No, that's a very a valid question that came in the last webinar that probably remain unanswered. While at the end, I tried to cover in terms of what are the real life use cases we are seeing. But maybe we'll pick a couple of examples and then Jay can add on as well. So depending upon which industry you look at, I mean, there are obviously different use cases. But if I look at from a horizontal function standpoint, right? R&D department of any organization which is sitting on wealth of information, both structured and unstructured. Or if you look at e-commerce as a line of business or as a function, if you will, which is looking at massive content generation, right? Those two I can pick up. There are many more, for example, adverse event in life sciences and things like that, where we have been able to, like you said, deploy not just large language model, but an overall solution that basically leverages LLM at the same time has also the ability, to kind of go after structured, unstructured text and image, all kinds of data, and bring cohesive information together. Any R&D department and this is a particular case that I'm talking about for a large CPG company, sitting on, I'm talking product R&D department, sitting on wealth of data on previous research that being done. At the same time, every time you go for a new product R&D, it becomes blank slate, so to speak. So how do you make sure that you are able to very intuitively, very creative the information that is required, make it trustworthy, provide topics that are required for a particular research or product R&D initiative at that point in time, suggested questions to ask, to make it even more meaningful in terms of consumption of insight. That's one real life use case where we've seen a huge success, both in terms of adoption as well as how they have been able to leverage it for the future, product innovation. The e-commerce example that I talked about is one
Nitish,
which we have.
before we go into the e-commerce, sorry, I will
Sure.
butt in here, but you know, is it like you said, it's a powerful weapon? You made that statement. Uh, was it because of LLM the adoption happened, or there was certain other things also? Because it's easy, like what we saw when AI came in. Every tool became an AI tool. Now I'm sure there will be a lot of this new wave. Everything is going to be Gen AI, right, or generative AI, or LLM enabled. But for clarification, was it only LLM which made that big difference, or were there certain other things which Course 5 did to really take it to the next level?
No, absolutely. So again, it was not just LLM, right? I mean, LLM certainly enhances the overall consumption capability, but the whole idea from a course type perspective, we believe in the value curve, which basically says that our job is not just to provide insights or analytical recommendation, but our job is to make sure we work with the customer in such a way that we drive adoption and through that lead to impact. And in that context, creating a solution, we have a platform called Discovery, which basically leverages the power of this entire user journey analysis, if you will. Who are the people who are going to consume, what form, shape, manner in which they would like to consume inside, and then basically being able to provide a capability through this platform where they are able to consume meaningful information at the kind of medium, at the kind of interval that they typically would like to receive. Now, LLM obviously enhances the experience or the usability by making it a lot more intuitive. English like questions being asked, answers being provided. Right next questions to be kind of guided, if you will. So I think it is definitely a lot more than just pure play LLM. But LLM certainly enhances the overall experience.
Thanks. Sorry, I interrupted you for the e-commerce one. Just quickly, you want to share about the e-commerce piece as well?
Sure. So from an e-commerce perspective, I mean, think of a company which is into millions of SKU, thousands and then millions of SKU. If you and they truly want to remain agile. From that context, they'll have to continuously generate content, publish content in terms of product attributes, product title, competitive feature, so on and so forth. So, when you start to kind of bring, if marketing gives the brand guideline, the banner guideline, the messaging guideline, and then your product MDM on the other side, which is giving you all the attributes that you need or information that you need from product perspective. And then obviously there's a structure, there's a data set which is trusted upon, which basically brings a lot of competitive features or competitive product analysis. Leveraging all of the three, you can do a lot more automated, creative, and intelligent content generation to keep your entire product page a lot more attractive, to make sure that that has the right SEO inbuilt capability so that your search ranking goes up. So that's another use case that we have seen that is becoming very popular. I talked about adverse event reporting, massive clinical trial, massive, qualitative information, user interviews, and then, right now is a very traditional way in which adverse event is typically being reported. And then I think LLM or generative AI can certainly leapfrog that experience, of being able to, in time, much faster, being able to capture and address those issues arising out of adverse event. Those are some of the use cases that we have seen, that we are working with, where clients have reaped massive benefit. But Jay, if you want to please add on, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the interesting stuff which we are actually experiencing is that, I mean, we all talk about like personalization, recommending the best product, and so on and so forth, right? I mean, we recommend the product, but are we recommending a content which is also kind of very, very specific for that particular persona, right? I mean, that's actually going to be a very, very interesting game changer if you're able to do that. With the power of LLM, I think we would be able to do that, because if you're able to supply information like, hey, this customer is like belonging to certain segment, and this is the kind of the profile of this particular customer who is actually currently on my site, and that means like once I have that information, I can call my LLM module and then create like very, very contextual and to the point and very very appealing to that particular persona who's actually logged onto my site, right? So that's going to be a very very interesting game changer, because I mean, if he's a student or if he's like working professional, the same product is kind of um, marketed or actually presented in a different way to each of them, so they like that content. Currently if you see, like most of the websites have same kind of content irrespective of whoever is actually logging on, right?
Yeah.
The product actually recommendation is like I get a different product, you get a different product, but the content remains the same. So that's going to be a very interesting stuff. And with LLM we would be able to really do it at really scale. That's actually the beauty of what we're actually experiencing.
So building on to what you just said, now this is a like a wild, wild west. Companies can go and have many use cases, right? It's like eh, there are enough use cases where you can today write a LinkedIn post, you can write a tweet. Those are everybody's doing it today, to be candid. But if for an enterprise, they are not at the luxury of keeping the regulatory, the compliance, and all of that, which we will have a separate session on it to get all together. But let's say, if the enterprise have to say, okay, these are my quick wins from our experience at Course 5, which we have seen, which companies can say, hey, it's already being done in the industries, my peers have done it, it's for me to go ahead and take on. Nitesh, would you bucket two or three areas, and Jay can then share others if he has?
So from a use case bucketing standpoint,
Yeah, use case or strategies,
strategy. Okay.
how.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. So first of all, I think we talked about use cases are plenty. I think you got to choose very carefully. Not every candidate is right for just jumping in with LLM and generative AI. In fact, we've got plenty of failed examples as well. We talked about some successful. We all know about that chatbot called Samantha. Microsoft Stay. A lot of where you get it wrong, either because you've got the wrong data set, or you expose too much, or you've not taken care of certain privacy in terms of what other people can do and use it for different purpose. So a lot of things that you need to be careful about. But when you come to, let's say, strategy as to how you adopt and deploy generative AI models successfully, I think there are three things look at. I mean, again, first of all, do you have the right adoption and deployment strategy? Are you going for a lot of out of box API and plugins, or are you doing a lot of custom? What kind of prompt engineering capability have you deployed to make sure that the usability becomes very clearly? It's more like a guided approach as opposed to probably wild west, if you will. Is it fine tuned as opposed to, again, exposed to a lot of data that cannot be then that generates a trust issue? So from an adoption deployment perspective, I think those strategies need to be thought through in your framework. From a technology stack perspective also, and Jay will add a lot more to it in terms of which one are you going for, Azure OpenAI or Google App, Gen AI App Builder and things like that. And then have you kind of looked at a lot of solution accelerator that can make it a lot more easy to deploy, as opposed to probably trying to again just go with a very generic approach? If you look at you know from a success strategy standpoint, what we have done is we have kind of created a framework which basically looks at complexity on one side and value on the other side, or fitness of the use case, if you will, from a value perspective on the other side. And then leveraging that approach, I think you don't have to try and do over engineer, and you can go with very very pragmatic approach of how you go about implementing it, deploying it, adopting it. And I think that was what I'll recommend from a strategy perspective. But Jay, if you want to please build on that.
Yep, definitely. I think like there are like various modes in which actually companies can actually adopt the Gen AI technology today. For example, they can actually directly consume some of these models the way it is, like out of box, whatever actually it offers. That's one. Number two is like, I mean, for example, GPT kind of models, they have plugins. So actually, you can use the capability of GPT and then combine with like some of these marketplace plugins which are actually available. So you kind of bring in the best of both worlds, like LLM capability plus the whatever the plugin offers. It could be like summarizing a PDF or basically booking a ticket, right? I mean, multiple kind of capabilities actually you can bring in with that, a combination of those plugins plus those LLMs. The other way is like, I mean, the most widely used stuff is like the prompt engineering thing, which actually many companies are actually adopting. And within prompt engineering, it is very very evolving space, and it is kind of a, people are actually trying to do it in a bit of trial and error for very specific use cases. So you might do with single prompts, or actually you might do with like things like chain of reasoning or chain of prompts and so on so forth. So multiple ways actually you can do to implement that using prompt engineering. Then we have, of course, the fine tuning kind of approach, which is like um, needs a little bit of technology expertise compared to the other two approaches. So when it comes to fine tuning, you will have to choose like which is the specific model which is actually most compatible to the kind of task actually you are looking at, right? Are you going to do or create a chatbot, or you're going to create some search and summarization, Q&A, uh, you are going to do some entity extraction. So depending on like the kind of use cases actually you want to do, you definitely need to approach it that way. So there are like multiple ways of actually doing it, or you just start consuming like these things directly from some of these out of box things provided by Azure or GCP or AWS or any of those providers. So that's a approach which people can actually adopt.
No, this is interesting, Jay. And you spoke about prompt engineering, both you and Nitesh. If I start asking you questions on prompt engineering and how organizations, because prompt engineering is actually an art, it's not a science. It's how good you can ask somebody a question. It's that inquisitiveness. How do you build that? And many people, to be very candid, may not have it also to do that. And I would recommend that we have a separate session altogether, which is dedicated towards prompts and how do organizations ensure, because like I made that statement of wild wild west. You giving an input and I giving an input to a platform, to an LLM, can have a variety of outputs, right? But to ensure that there is consistency and similarity, at least it's never going to be the same, but at least 90% similarity between what you get versus what I get, Jay. It requires a structured process and a thinking, which will come in our future sessions, which out there. But Ajinkya, I just want to give a shout out. Thank you for sharing your love with us. That's the intention, is to keep it informative for individuals who are attending. But Jay, the point we just spoke about technologies, right? Now, it's a fun situation or a fun industry to be in right now, because there's so much of hype right now. There is, every day we hear new technologies. I don't know if you've ever subscribed to any of these newsletters which are flowing in, but every day I'm getting three new tools or five new tools every day when it comes to Gen AI. And if I'm in an enterprise situation, I will be baffled, first of all. Like, how do I go about selecting it? Now, I don't want you to focus on the legal and the privacy and all of that. That
Yeah.
can go on into a very different section. But when you think about technology also and the adoption of technology, we've seen that organizations who've adopted a technology without figuring out the process, how does it fit into my existing ecosystem, have failed miserably in deploying or adopting those technologies. So, what's your perspective? There are so many floating around right now. Some may not be approved by the company or the enterprise, and some may be approved, but they don't know how to go about doing it, whether that's strong, not strong enough. And we have conversations every day, right? We get pinged by these providers. And
Yeah.
so that's one set. I also want you to touch base a little bit on Chrome as a Chrome extensions, right? There are a lot of these plugins now available on Chrome extensions as well, right? So how does somebody go ahead and do that?
Yeah, definitely. I think there are so many questions which actually you asked together. So as you said, like I mean,
That's me.
uh, so I think with hype, definitely like pretty much everybody in the organization would be interested to do something with LLM. And sometimes it so happens like people who are doing even data science projects want to use LLM for what they were actually doing with traditional data science model. So we just need to be cautious about like um, uh, I mean, where are we applying these models, right? What is the applicability of that? That is actually very important. I mean, if I may kind of make some comparison, I mean, AI was something like a hammer with a, let's say, wooden handle. Now LLM is like something with a steel handle. So just because you got this, don't start using it like everywhere. Actually, you are actually wanting to do that, right? That's not something we want to do. So we definitely need to look at it like from a individual use case perspective, and then how much of in that particular use case LLM is applicable. Maybe you can do a combination of like what you do today with data science. You get certain models, you actually get some output. Would you like to feed those outputs and then get some narratives in the form of like very very interesting narratives which actually you can represent your insights, right? That you can do. So a combination of like traditional data science model plus LLM would be a very very interesting one. That's something we can explore. Number two is like when you're actually selecting these models, we need to see like I mean, if you're trying something new, it's not like what to go and do some fine tuning and other stuff right in the beginning, right? You just start consuming like whatever is kind of made available either by Azure, OpenAI, or GCP, or any of those players, and start kind of experimenting and then seeing that what kind of results it actually provides. How does it compare with what I'm getting today, right? Those kind of stuff actually you can do. But when it comes to like if you see that okay, that's going to be a little bit of a issue from a security and privacy issue and those kind of stuff, then you need to rely on open source models. And within open source models, then actually you need to look at like the different kind of model benchmarks it actually has. I mean, for example, each of these models, the falcons and the llamas and bards and all those kind of model, we have like different kind of benchmarks which are actually available. These benchmarks actually give you some results in terms of like how does this model perform in a typical question and answering kind of mode, or is it good at like something kind of a common sense kind of questions, right? Drawing logical inferences when you ask questions. Is it like a specialized model on one task, or actually it can do multiple tasks, right? So you just need to look at like what is the task which is on your hand, and whether that task can be accomplished from the models which are actually available. Because the leaderboard is like something like an IPL cricket I mean table, right? Who goes first every day, like someone or the other is actually ahead of you on a particular day or a week, right? So you just need to pick the right one which actually works for you, and then start exploring that. And the other one actually you spoke about like the plugins. Of course, as I said earlier as well, like the LLMs, like for example GPT, they actually offer this kind of plugins.
Mm-hmm.
And these plugins actually are kind of marketplaces, just like how we have like for in the Google Play Store multiple apps are there. The same world actually we are seeing when it comes to the LLM as well. We'll see more and more apps getting created and then made available on this kind of platform, so that you are bringing in like the best of both worlds, like the LLM plus the plugins. I mean, it's an interesting space for startups. Like the big enterprises like Google's and Microsoft's will create these large models, and then the smaller players like the innovators on the edge, right? They can actually create a lot of these apps, combine both these things, and then we are going to see a very very transformative thing in the near future.
My phone currently has too many apps, so you're saying my phone is probably needing more space to go ahead and have these apps. And it's a very interesting connotation of the stores apps, right? We've always seen that AI has been infused in many of the apps we use, but what you're saying is that there's going to be an LLM or a Gen AI store or an apps which will start showing up. So it's very interesting. But I just want to flip this on its head, and Jay, you can be very technical, but more from a business perspective, Nitesh, when you think about as an executive, you are running Coast 5 on a day-to-day operations, and I'm sure a lot of team members come and say, hey Nitesh, this is a nice funny platform, we want to use it. How do you go about, or what would you recommend to your fellow colleagues or peers in the market? Like, how would you recommend they should go about selecting or deselecting platforms?
So I think Jay started by saying that, one good thing, that the hype typically leads to herd mentality, right? We are all from tech industry, where so much of, I keep saying this, the pace of innovation and pace of competition is unparalleled. I mean, we have never seen this before. What used to take 5 years is now taking 5 months. What used to take 5 months is taking 5 days. So you got to be very careful, because it's very easy to jump into bandwagon and get carried away, right? You have to choose the use case very carefully. Very very important in terms of what's the objective with which you're picking it up. For example, right, we have experimented with, and Jay keeps me honest here, that when we did with the GitHub, Copilot, if you will, right? So in Python and Java, we've been able to improve the coding and coding productivity by almost 12 to 14%. Now there are issues, don't get me wrong, it's not like all hunky dory. There are bugging issues, and but it's something that is so here and now, where I can clearly see that the use case is absolutely applicable for a core KPI metric that I am responsible to drive, which is productive utilization. So obviously, yes, I think you need to make sure that you have got a framework where you are able to very clearly identify what exactly are you going in for fun, for academic purpose, and or is there a business rationale, where in the short and or at least midterm, there's a clear path to achieving what you set out to achieve. Otherwise, it will become a lot of academic exercise, a lot of money wasted with the hype, and that's social enterprise can afford to do. So I'm very clear that keep in mind the objective, have a framework around which you can plot what's the time frame in which you're trying to achieve whatever objective that you're trying to achieve, and then pick up the use case that is right for such technology, such hype, or such transformative initiatives.
Yeah, and I just want to sum it up. If organizations have to really think about implementation and using technology, the basic principle that they need to keep in mind is augmentation. Now, augmentation is of different levels, right? And there is a one very at the top which I have seen now and is becoming very interesting as a use case, which has been something which we've been working on. So basic augmentation is you provide information and people are okay. You provide, it's like you've read news today. That's an information which has been provided, but it's in a narrative format. Then there is a little bit of interaction and engagement, which is the second level, where, to Jay's point, the bots which are there, you're querying, you're asking, and you're getting refined information, or you're making that your hypotheses on that information is getting better, or you're getting answers to those hypotheses. So that's the second level. The third level, which today don't get spoken about, but it's so powerful, and organizations should start thinking about from an augmentation. How do you have a platform enabled by Gen AI which becomes a research assistant, which enables you to ask or gives you questions to think about, as an example, and that today has that there are capabilities like that. So if I'm a marketeer, or if I'm a product person and I'm thinking of entering a market, or if I'm thinking of adding features, can I have a research assistant who can tell me what are the possible scenarios or things that they should care about? That's the paramount level of augmentation. But there's, so that's one aspect. But the other aspect from a technology selection, what I have seen, at least in my humble experience, how good the community is backing up these platforms or these models or these ecosystems. Because we've seen many great platforms with great promise coming through, but we don't see a community backing them up. And if you really look at and if you just look at within the AI space, whether the data platforms or the RPA platforms or the BI platforms, the difference between winners and failures have been is community. Because what we have seen, or at least I have seen in my experience, is that community really propels or compels those organizations to push forward their R&D agenda and their larger agenda. So that's a big thing which should not be avoided when you're selecting a technology, is how good the individuals, because every player will go ahead and talk about their R&D roadmap, their R&D spend, how good the models are, how good their benchmarks are. All of those may become standard. This additional flavor of community will really make it a big lever for tech companies to, or to really hone on or build on as they go along this journey. But
So Anish,
Jay and I,
you bring a very important point, because sometimes we often forget, and it's not just in context of this. Any company which is in the business of reaching out to masses, and leverage platforms and techniques, right, needs to think about. I keep saying that you should only worry about community. Let the community generate content, and then the commercials, success will follow, right? So I think it's so apt in this context. And then to your previous point about a platform that enables you to ask right questions, I keep thinking that AI analytics, it's very very weird concept, because business users more often than not don't even understand what questions to ask, right?
yeah,
If you probably relate to it, if you got a small child, you go home, and they'll typically ask you a question. You have two choices: either answer the question or shut them up. If you shut them up, end of topic. If you answer the right way, then the next question, which basically becomes an intuitive question on top of first question, and it gets a lot more smarter, right? So I think the platforms, which can enable that kind of capability for you to become intelligent and intelligent after every successive iteration, interaction, if you will. I think that's extremely fundamental apart from the community aspect you talked about.
Yeah, no, it, yesterday I was sitting with a client and he made such a profound statement. I said I should tweet it or I should put it somewhere. He said, "How can you make smarter task easy?" That was his statement, and such a profound statement, Nitesh, to just build on to what you just said, how you make your the employee base, which is now precious in this DNA age, right, with technology overtaking a lot of tasks. How do you make employees within your companies more smarter? So that's a different segue. But you know Jay, you spoke about something which has been burning in my head. Organizations about 5 years, 6 years ago, they started with the entire data analytics journey, right? There are so many models built. We also know there are a lot of graveyards of these models in every organization, but there are models which are in production also. Now, if I'm an enterprise, now with LLM and Gen AI, right? And I know we are using both in the same breath, but we know Gen AI is a much more larger topic. But let's just focus on Gen AI models, right? Are all those investments waste for those companies? What should they do, right? It's a good strategy for somebody's job to be still there because they can say, hey, we are now transitioning it to a 2.0 or a 3.0. But is that a right way of thinking?
Yeah, I think the the interesting thing which actually companies need to do is like if they are on the adoption journey of LLM, it's like they need to have their baselines very very clear. Okay, where are they with respect to, let's say, the model performance metrics or the business metrics, in which actually they're actually using these models. Okay, so if we have those baselines clear, then actually we can see like um, what is the kind of benefit I'm getting, and by adopting these LLMs, because there are some benchmarks already available, like how good or how bad they are, some of these models, right? So you can see like what is that increment I'm going to get from a technology performance as well as from the business performance as well. So it is not wise to kind of make all those previous investments as sunk cost and then start on a fresh slate and start building everything with LLM. That may not be a very good approach, because these investments were done in the past and all of them had a business case. They all had like kind of a payback period, return of investment guidelines, and all those stuff were there. So you just cannot throw everything and then start on this like fresh, right? So that's not very advisable. So you need to be very selective. For example, Nitish spoke about like some of those areas where you can apply, for example, sales and marketing, or product R&D, or within like your own software development or customer experience and service and those kind of stuff. So you look at like, are you going to make some real breakthrough improvement in any of these areas from a productivity point of view and those kind of stuff. So take those use cases where you see like the impact is going to be high and the feasibility is also high, and start experimenting those kind of use cases. So that's what I would suggest.
Nitesh, you want to add anything to what Jay have just
No, I
said?
think Jay has spoken very very. See, it's very easy to, again, when we heard this various phases which we have gone through, right? Digital transformation, crowdsourcing wave, and then now AI wave, and then now generative AI. Very easy to kind of think, okay, do I start all over again? Or all the investment that I had done, the technology debt that I have built, is it really a non-performing asset? I think that's very wrong thing to, wrong approach, if right. I mean. I think you need to absolutely be clear in terms of what use cases are you picking, why are you picking, is it incremental build on top of what you've already done? Because not every use case require rocket science or very transformative capability. Depending upon let's take an example, right? I mean, customer service, a company with typically 5,000 people, right? From a customer service perspective, if they think, and that's kind of proven, that they can improve the overall agent handling rate and or time to serve, and or let's say free up the agent bandwidth to do a lot more managerial or value added tasks, and then reduce the talk time requested from manager. Classical use case, probably yes, worth going for, right? But if it is a typical BI dashboard which is serving its purpose, no point trying to over engineer and try to bring LLM if you don't see a value differentiator. If it is typically a normal non-differentiated function, so I think you have to be very careful about trying to treat all the previous investment as waste, and then try and keep on adopting this new way for the heck of it.
I know we are almost coming to our end. There are a few questions left which I would like to double click on. If from Just a shout out to the audience, if they have any questions, please leave your comments in the LinkedIn comments, and I'll try to answer some of them. And it will help in our future sessions as well as part of our Gen AI series. So, Jay, what you've just said is also very interesting, which is about the benchmarks. Now, as an organization, first of all, how do I identify my benchmarks? Okay, and if I'm implementing, let's say I go on this journey of taking Gen AI and adopting it, what is an audit process to ensure that my benchmarks are staying true or it's improving? you know we have seen model degradation happens, right? And that's why ML ops and DevOps are required as part of it. Now I'm sure there are going to be Gen AI ops also, which will come in, a new buzzword. But let's say, how do you ensure less degradation and ensure auditability, more from a validation, not auditability from a legal aspect. That is a separate discussion.
Yeah.
But purely from an audit perspective, specifically around the benchmark point you mentioned, how do you ensure that that stays true?
Yep. I think from a when we look at audit, there are like multiple dimensions actually you look at it, right? One is like from a model perspective, the core model which you have. Number two is like the application which actually consumes that particular model, because there's a functional capability which that actually model is actually supposed to perform. The third part is like the overall governance around like the whole um, the set of LLM applications which is there in your enterprise, right? So there are like three aspects actually you need to look at it. When you look at the model, the first and foremost you need to look at is like, I mean, especially when it comes to the open source kind of model, they are quite transparent in terms of like what kind of data actually this particular model is actually trained on. Because end of the day, like your model's capability is like as good as the corpus on which actually it is trained on, right? So you need to have a view of like what kind of data it is actually trained on, web data or Twitter data, and then like what are its capabilities from a task perspective. As I said earlier, can it do Q&A, can it do sentiment analysis, because these are like instruction based models. A large foundation model, you kind of fine tune it for certain type of instructions, so you need to be clear on like this particular model what is it capable of, and then see like what you're going to do kind of matches with that or not. So you have those performance benchmarks actually available for each of that, whether it is 63.5% good or 50% good on each of these tasks, so you have that metric already available. Now the other thing actually you need to look at is like when you are actually using it in your world, right? You adapted those particular model for your company, and then you have to start logging. I mean, be it you are actually using it as an API through prompt engineering or anything, you need to start logging like what is the context actually which is you are providing, which is your input, and then what is the completion, which is actually your output. So you need to keep logging this, and at the same time, like you need to have a set of, let's say, test oracles, right? I mean, it is like you have, let's say, you are expecting a certain output when actually you use that particular prompt. So you need to be able to test your prompt against those ground truth and see like how similar is that against the ground truth. That's very very important metric actually we need to look at. That's a very very important validation procedure as well, because unless you do that, I mean, you may feel like the LLM is giving some fantastic stuff, but you need to validate that as well. That is very important, because this is going to be used in different kind of applications, right? It can be used by your customers, it can be used like within your other employees, or maybe you are sending something to the regulator as well, which is even more risky, right? So you need to be like checking these things against the ground truth, and also giving some scores. Let's say I tested against, let's say, 10 prompts, and out of that, the current results only show that 8 are good and 2 are not good. So you should have that logged in your quality management system as defects as well. Just like how you test any other software application, you need to have the same kind of rigor or more rigor when it comes to kind of validating these kind of applications, because it is actually evolving every day, right? So you need to be very careful about how we actually use it. The other thing is like we need to do model versioning, and the other thing, now you need to also do prompt versioning also. For example, you have actually defined your prompt templates and you're getting a certain type of output, but you feel like something I need to improve, and you change your prompt template. Now you don't know whether I got 8 out of 10 last time, this time the remaining two which were error that got corrected,
Or it
but
has
the
got
out of the
worse.
remaining eight,
Or it has got
yeah, we
worse.
don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it got worse. So you just need to do your impact assessment and testing and other stuff, regression testing. That's other stuff you definitely need to do. So a lot of checks and balances are actually required, and then that will actually help you to use these models in a much more responsible way.
But Jay, there is one big piece which is there in Gen AI, and we are seeing some of that, right? People are making fun of it and all of that, right? Like famous celebrities in certain avatars, as an example. There was a big issue which happened about Pope, and that stirred the entire conversation about privacy and legacy. There's a little bit of hallucination which happens, right? It's called the hallucination. How do you do an hallucination audit? You spoke about prompt audit, right?
Yeah.
Is it at the output or the input level? Where would you recommend it?
The prompt audit typically you do at a output level, because you're actually providing a certain input and you are actually expecting a certain output, right? For example, you are actually trying to generate, let's say, content, website content for your product, right? So in that case, like you can say that, hey, I am expecting an output like this, and let's say it's a laptop and it has like certain RAM, and then processor details and other stuff, and let's say like you provide your SKU name, and it actually gives some other RAM capacity, right, or hard disk capacity. That's actually, it is hallucinating. It is not like your product specification. It's actually doing something else from its own memory, right? So you just need to look at like what actually you want to audit for. For example, in the case I'm telling a laptop and its specification, that means like those specifications should be coming out in your product description as well. It cannot be something else, or for some other laptop details should not come for this particular laptop. So you can specifically extract those entities which is there in your output. A RAM entity I'm going to extract, or processor I'm going to extract, or display I'm going to extract, right? So then actually check against your specification and see like whether it is right or not, whether it is hallucinating or not. Similar to that, you can look for like other kind of qualitative features actually which you have described for your particular product. So you can actually check against different kind of parameters on your output, and then provide some kind of a rating or weighted rating and other stuff, and say, hey, I am 7 out of 10, and we'll definitely need little bit of human effort to make it fine tune it and make it better.
Human in the loop is critical here, and I think there's an interesting question which Mukesh has asked through the question, and what he's asking is, should it be done? Should the QA be done at the model release cycle, or on a continuous basis? Because like the more new data comes in, the outputs can vary, as we have seen. So, what is your recommendation,
Yeah.
or what have you seen?
I think the way to do is definitely during model development as well as like model release. Absolutely, it is required, but definitely we need to do subsequently as well, because I mean drift is something which we always experience, right? Once you deploy these models, and also like people can tweak their prompt templates and other stuff. Again, things can change. So you definitely need to have a mechanism where you either do maybe 100% test in the beginning, and then subsequently you keep reducing that percentage, and then you go more for a sample kind of testing subsequently. So just like how you typically do in a manufacturing world as well, right? If your process is, let's say, Six Sigma kind of accuracy you have, you do for a sampling. But if you are not that level, you go for more testing to prove that it is better. And also you need to look at like where are you going to use this particular application, how much of risk is actually there in that particular world, right? depending on that, your rigor for test should be, I mean, either low or high.
Building on to what you've just said, and as a company, we at Cosfi, we recommend this, right? So for example, if you look at databases, need to be, if it's larger databases, they need to be validated on a continuous basis. But then there are BI, which is business, they typically get validated, or QA happens on a continue, but they get validated every 3 months, right? Because after 3 months, things can go stale or not be used. Today, we see models being validated when the data gets refreshed. But these are more as part of the process. But in this, while you do all of the processes which I've just mentioned, the other interesting piece is on the usage, which Mukesh called out, is a necessity today. How the model is being, or how the users are interacting, and is that in the right
Yeah.
quality governance framework. We saw that today Midjourney also stopped. First of all, it was free. It has made it paid now because of certain of these issues, right? So I think the usage audit is becoming a new dimension from a QA perspective. I know we only have 2 minutes left. We only have probably one question time, I would say. If anybody has, we'll give 10 seconds if anybody wants to write it down. Unfortunately, we don't have LLM which can convert your speech to text yet on this webinar or on this LinkedIn Live. But if you can write it out quickly, we'll take that last question. I can share that, Sumant. So forget the future, it is now. I coach and as a passion, I mentor a lot of students. Today, I know a lot of students are using Gen AI to go ahead and submit their assessments, and I gave that topic about asking the right question. So they're using Gen AI to get smarter about a topic. Or so that's already there. Same way, as a teacher or as a instructor, I know a lot of teachers and instructors today are using Gen AI to expand their knowledge, because please remember, as humans we have limited capacity, and as teachers also they have limited capacity, right? Every human has a limited capacity, but using these tools like Gen AI, it expands our universe, it expands our knowledge. So forget about future, it's there right now. I know a lot of institutions have started enhancing and building their knowledge base using Gen AI capabilities. So it's very much there now, it's not in the future, it's there now. It's being used by institutions as well as by the teachers and by the student communities. And in fact, now there is governance coming around. There are platforms being built to check whether there is a straightaway lift from the output which has been produced by the Gen AI platforms like ChatGPT, or there are many more. I know we are on time, and I want to be respectful for every audience who've attended this. Samant, if you have a follow-up question, we'll be happy to connect with you offline and discuss this. But no, thank you to first to Nitesh and Jay for taking your precious time out from your busy schedules and tolerating me with my quirky questions. But hopefully for the audience, this has been helpful. This is just a start. We will be coming up with more of these Gen AI series. You should definitely look up to the next two ones, which one will be focused on prompt engineering, and the second one will be focused on legal aspects of the entire Gen AI. And for all of you, you would be wondering, hey, I might have missed out on this segment or any of these segments. We will. This session is recorded, so we'll be sharing with you, the links which you can go ahead and access. But please be safe, take care, and thanks, Jay and Nitesh.
Thank you, Anis, and thank you to our lovely audience. It was lovely. It was great to interact with you, and look forward to many more.
Yep. Thank you, Anis.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you.
Bye-bye.